We are back for another episode of Wow Warrior, and I have an incredible guest with me, and I know you're going to agree. She has been on Dr. Oz 5 times, people. She has 20, I said 20 books, and a multitude of other things. She has been on many talk shows, etc. I am so excited to introduce you to this amazing Wow Warrior. Welcome, Stacey Chillemi, to Wow Warrior.
Hi, Sherri. It's such a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Now, like 20 books in and of itself is like tremendous to me. And everybody has a story, and I know part of yours, and I want to have you share a little bit about those stories. But I want to back up and have you share with our viewers a little bit. I know you're a speaker and a wonderful coach, but I want you to talk about Stacey the person. Let's find out a little bit about who Stacey Chillemi is. Can you tell us a little bit about how your journey started?
I'd love to. So, when people ask me that question, I have to go back into my childhood years because it really all began, when I was 5 years old, and I had an ear infection. I had a little virus, and I went to the doctor. They gave me medication, and all of a sudden, my mom heard a gurgling sound that night in my room. So she went on to check on me, and I actually was turning blue, and I was in a grand mal seizure. I was rushed to the hospital, and they found that the virus I had traveled to my brain, and it turned into encephalitis. And they induced me into a coma, and they didn't know what was going to happen. And then they came to my parents and they said, most likely, if she comes out of this coma, she'll probably be paraplegic or she'll have severe brain damage. Well, they were devastated. And my father, who was from Greece, he came from a little island in Greece. There was one church, one statue. He was visualizing that statue, and that statue was known to have tears roll down its eyes. And he told me that he was praying to that statue and hoping that I would be okay. And he said on the fourth day, he looked up and my eyes opened, and I looked at him and I said, Daddy, can I have McDonald's French fries? And he was ecstatic. And, I didn't end up paraplegic. I didn't have brain damage, but I did end up with epilepsy. Till this day, they can't find the scar tissue that caused the epilepsy, but it was a lifelong kind of roller coaster ride for me. And when I got into college, it became even more challenging because the late night studying, the stress of getting good grades, my seizures increased. And at one point, I didn't even know if I was going to be able to actually be able to complete college. And that was on my bucket list. I wanted to finish college, and I had these big dreams for myself. And so I just wrote a letter and I sent it to the Epilepsy Foundation. They had a magazine. I said, please publish this letter. And in this letter, I said, how do you cope with epilepsy? I said, please share your stories with me. Because when I went to the library, there was like 5 books about epilepsy written by doctors in medical terminology. And if you weren't a doctor, you had no clue what they were talking about. So to my surprise, there was 300 to 400 letters that came from all over the United States and Canada. These letters were so inspiring. They talked about, how they cope with it, how to get through it. And I took all those letters, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I wasn't alone. And I created a regimen for myself, and I finished college and I got through it. And I said, one day I'm going to write a book, and I'm going to put all these letters together, and I'm going to write and show everybody how I got through it, and I'm going to help someone. And then I ended up getting a really big corporate job after college. And I thought I was living the lime life. Any young girl that comes out of college, lands this great job. I was like in my,
Oh,
cloud
and you know what?
world.
I got to stop you right there, Stacey, cuz you gave me chills. Like when you just shared that, that is such an example of how the ripple of blessings can work, right? And I know you're going to move into how you used that experience to create the ripple of blessings forward. But I don't want to let that moment go by without
Yeah.
acknowledging all those people that poured their hearts and stories into you, that changed the trajectory of your life, which I know you're going to share with us how that has manifested in your life. But I want to acknowledge every single one of those people and the Epilepsy Foundation that published it, right? That
Yeah.
allowed your story to spread and your plea for help, right? Like,
Oh,
because you could have just not written the letter at all. And where would your life be today? In a very different place, I imagine. So, nothing happens by accident. I know we've had that conversation before, but
yeah.
I just wanted to point out about that particular spot that was just such an inflow of blessings, because I know we're going to talk some more about how the blessings have continued to ripple out from you that were given to you. So go ahead
Yeah.
and share with us the story at work.
Okay. So, I had this really big job and everything was going great. And then one day I felt a funny feeling, and they call it an aura. And basically
Mhm.
it's kind of like a signal that a seizure is going to come. So I was in a big hallway. I'm looking around. I'm trying to find an area where no one would see me, because my whole life I hid. When I had a seizure, I tried to go somewhere where nobody would see me have it, but there was nowhere to go. And I ended up falling on the floor. I was conscious, but I couldn't move. And one of the executives just stepped over me like I was just like a piece of garbage on the floor and kept walking. And I saw him do it because I was conscious, but I couldn't move. I couldn't talk. And I said to myself, I can't believe this guy just walked over me. I'm like, he didn't help me. He didn't help me get up or anything. And then 30 minutes later, one of the co-assistants came over and said, Stacey, you're doing such a great job, but you're not exactly what we're looking for right now. And I knew it was because they saw me have the seizure and they just didn't want anything about me, And so, I didn't let it get me down. I said, you know what? There's something better out there. I said, it just isn't meant to be. When things don't happen the way you want them, I've learned in life, it's just not meant to be. So I walked out of there with my head up high and I said, one day I'm going to be a success. And I kept that in the back of my head, and I was going to be a success. And so I started to write. I started to create, different pieces. I started a freelance business. I started working with really big names, and I ended up meeting an herbalist, and he says, I need a lot of research done on natural healing. And I said, oh, this is cool. So I started researching about holistic healing, herbals, detox, all this stuff. And I said, wow, a lot of this stuff could apply to my own life. So I started to do some of the stuff that I was learning to my own life. And my seizures went from 12 to 9 to 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, to the point where I was controlled. So with using my medication, changing my lifestyle, and doing holistic living, all those things together, I was able to control my seizures. So I
Nice.
was so inspired that I actually put together during that course of that time, I put together all those letters I was talking about. I created my regimen. I wrote that book and I called it Epilepsy, You're Not Alone, because the one thing that came in my head, those letters kind of showed me that, yeah, right by my heart, that I wasn't alone. And I wrote that book, and it became a bestseller because there was no books about coping with epilepsy. You have books, about the treatment, the causes, the symptoms, but nobody talked about how to cope with it. And I wrote that book, and then I took 6 more years to research and write, and I created the complete herbal guide to teach people about holistic living, to teach them about supplements, to teach them about how changing the trajectory of their life and focusing on a different way to retrain their brain. And I was hoping that I could help more than just people with epilepsy, that I could help people of anybody that wants to improve their life. So I kind of went on that journey, and then I had created a little blogger. I don't know if you remember Blogger. Google gave out a free little blog, when it first came out, and I started a little blog, and immediately 400 people came on. I was like, wow, people like this. They like the natural healing. So then I started to write about natural healing. I said, all this stuff that I talked about in the book could actually help everybody. So then I met a freelancer, and he created websites, and I was doing work for him. He said, Stacey, I could create that little blog you have. I can create a wonderful website for you. And he did. And the website grew from 10,000 to 100,000, and it just grew. And my writing spread, and I started to just, spread the word, and it just traveled. And now that's what I do. And I realize, and one thing I got it before you inject, I got to say, I got an email when we started getting emails back then. I opened the email and a person wrote to me and they said, I was on the verge of suicide. I found your book in Barnes and Nobles and you saved my life. And I just want to say thank you. Now that was when the light bulb went off. Yes, that was when the
Yeah.
light bulb went off. And I realized, you know what? This is my purpose in life. I realized that the power of the wisdom of words can be so powerful, and that what we say to other human beings can have such an impact on their lives. And at that moment, I realized that this is what I was meant to be. This is what meant to be. This is what my calling was. And this is what I was going to do. I was going to help people get to the point where they can live the life they deserve, to live their life to their true potential, and to be able to feel good about themselves.
I just love that so much. And, oh my gosh, like 1,000 things are going through my mind. Like, number one, like talking about warrior, like, wow, that warrior spirit, that never give up spirit. It's very evident in you, Stacey, which, I like to say that a wow warrior truly, when they walk in a room, the only thing that can be said is wow. And that is completely true of you as well. And the thing that's interesting is like how things play out in our lives, and they keep pushing you towards the path you're meant for, right? Because you
Yeah.
thought when you got that job that that was going to be the great thing and it was all wonderful, and that happened. But that happened so that you could stand in this purpose that you're talking about. And I love that you shared the story about the person that found that book, because you're right. There is a lot of intellectual, if you want to use that word,
Right.
books and things like that out there, but this is a book for people that you wrote, right? This was me being a person writing for other people in the same, situation, which is one of the things that, and I too have written many books and have shared my personal story. Can you share like a little bit about that? Because a lot of times they think their story isn't that big of a deal because they're used to it. It's their story, right? But can you share a little bit about sharing your story and how important it was for you to share it, and why you felt so strongly that it was important to share your story? Even that example, for example.
So, for years, I'll be truthful, for years, I did not want anyone to know that I had epilepsy, and I struggled with that. And, I was in denial at one point. I did not accept that I had epilepsy. I did not love the person that I saw in the mirror. I was holding a lot of anger, low self-esteem, and I slowly, when I realized that I wasn't the only one, and I realized, and I put that regiment together, and I was able to move forward in life, I realized that, first of all, I wasn't the only one. Every single person in this life has a story. Everybody goes through something, and we have, and it's not about pitying ourselves. When I was trying to get the right drug, they had me in trial groups, and people were taking up to 300 seizures a day. People were banging on their bodies, not purposely, but they were in a full grand mal seizure. They had brain damage, some of these people. And I looked around, I said, wow. I said, I'm pitying myself. I should be lucky. These are the people that are struggling. Everybody has a story. Everybody struggles. And you can't where does feeling sorry for yourself get you in life? Your story could save a person's life. Everyone has gone through things in life. No person's life is perfect. And your story could actually change another person's life, because I guarantee you there is somebody out there, or there are millions of people out there, or hundreds of people out there that have the same similar story, but don't know what to do. They don't know how to get to that second level. And by you sharing your story, and if you talk about how you overcome something, you could be helping and saving someone else's life. And I got to tell you, what
Yeah,
an
it's somebody you
achievement.
don't even know, right? Like, that's the point. You may never even know that you do it.
and storytelling is so important, because when you're in a room full of people and someone can relate to you, that bond is priceless. They're inspired by you. If you've learned how to get to the next level or overcome something, you've just inspired someone, and you've shown someone a way that they could get to it, or just ignite the light underneath them to actually want to do something about whatever they're going through. It's
Yeah,
so
absolutely, and
important.
I always like to say, Stacey, somebody somewhere out there is waiting for you. Like, they're literally waiting for you because you are the lifeline. Like that person that walked in the Barnes& and Noble and didn't know that they were gonna find their lifeline inside the book that you wrote, but it was your story, and that was the lifeline. I believe that that's true in every person's story.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's you sharing the story and getting it outside of yourself that you're creating your own lifeline, right? Because you're letting go of the story and putting it out there so that it isn't something to hide, like you said, isn't something to be ashamed of. It's just part of your experiences. It doesn't define you, it is just part of you. And that is so critically important in sharing your story. And I'm so glad that you shared your story, not just for the person who was saved from doing that, but also for all the people yet who are just meeting you for the first time. And we're going to talk some more about, I know you have a whole bunch more books. You're an incredible speaker, and we're going to talk about why speaking is such an important part of what you do, and you also coach people as well. So we're going to
Mhm.
talk about that when we come back from this quick break. And we are back with Stacey Chillemi. And my goodness, the first segment was so amazing and so powerful and so energy filled. I'm excited to talk more with you, Stacey, and learn more about the different ways that you are impacting. As we mentioned in your intro, that you do have 20 books. We did talk about the first one. Can you tell us a little bit more about how the other books came to be? And I know you've had some evolution in your books as well. The first one was specifically to provide that resource for people that have epilepsy to not feel alone. But can we talk about some of the other books that you've done?
Sure. So, I've written about the power of positivity. I feel, the power of positivity can get us through life. And that was one of the things that got me through life. And even in my latest book, I talk about empower yourself. Don't let your conditions empower you. And that means for anything. So it can go from not just having epilepsy, but it can go from, having stress, anxiety, diabetes, whatever the hell is going on with you. This book will help you get through it. And I dedicated one whole chapter to the power of positivity, because in anything that you go through in life, instead of feeling negative, and instead of feeling, bad for yourself or pitying yourself, everything we go in life, we can pull something positive from it. And by pulling something positive through anything that we go through life, we actually strengthen ourselves. So for me, having epilepsy, I learned that, it took me on a different journey. It made me stronger as a person. It gave me resilience. It made me look at people differently. Instead of, I don't look at people and judge people. I see the beauty in everyone. Now, would I have been like that if I worked the corporate life and I was living the fast lane? No, I'd probably be a completely different type of personality. But instead, I was taken on this journey, and I feel compassion for everybody. And it's helped me personally, and I've been able to help others through it. So I I draw positiveness out of every situation I go through in life. Instead of getting depressed, instead of going through, and I'm not going to say I never get depressed.
No.
I'm not perfect. I go through those moments just like everybody else. But when I get into those moments, or if I'm going through life and I'm going through an obstacle, I try to focus on the positive, and I try to pull positive things out from that moment, that obstacle I'm going through, and that actually helps strengthen me and helps me move forward. And being positive, if you're not positive, you're not going to be able to move forward in life. You have to have a positive mentality, and you could do that by retraining your brain, the way we think, the way we look at life, the way we react. It's a process.
Absolutely. And I think you just sort of articulated the exact reason why you've been able to navigate having epilepsy so well. Not because it isn't life altering, but because you've chosen to always see the blessings, even in the lessons, and also even in the hard things, you've always looked to find the blessing and the positive side of it, or the positive learning from it. We can learn something positive from everything, no matter how negative it is. And I always say I do the same thing, Stacey, and I don't care if people call me Pollyanna or whatever you want to call me. Like, but to me, that is the space that I want to live in as
Yeah,
well. Exactly where you are. That is the lane I am in. It's one of the reasons why I resonated with you when I met you,
yeah,
is because of that, because I too will find there might be one good thing out of 100 bad things in a row, but I'm gonna look to the positive thing and I'm going to take that out of it. And
yeah,
I think that's evident by how you've lived your life. Yes, the event like that you spoke of happened at work, but you took out of it something and made something out of it, even though it seemed like a bad thing. Actually, it opened a door, right,
yeah,
for you to expand yourself. It was meant for you anyway, but you took that as a positive, and you could be upset about that or whatever. I don't get that at all from you. I get that as you saw that as that opened opportunity for you. And you
yeah,
have run with that, not just in the ways that you are now serving, like you're speaking. And I do want to talk about that because it's so important to you to get onto platforms to be heard. Tell us what you are most passionate about speaking. So if someone's looking for a speaker, tell us what you are most passionate about sharing from the stage on.
I love to talk to people on how to reach their true potential in life. I talk about how to reduce stress and how to reach your potential, your true potential, because we all have a different definition of what our true potential is. But we all have the ability to grow, and we all have the ability to make our dreams a reality. And I talk about stress because stress, especially after COVID, we all go through stress, but people don't realize 70% of illnesses is caused by stress. When you're under stress, you can't focus, you can't think clearly. It affects your personal life, it affects you at work. It's just, stress is a killer. And so one thing we have to learn is coping skills. We can make it fun, we can make it enjoyable, but we have to learn different ways that we can reduce stress in our homes privately, even in the public when we feel stressed out. What can we do to reduce our stress level? And also to learn how to create and short-term goals and long-term goals, to figure out what we want in life, and then to go after it and move forward and to reach our true potentials, to understand what we are actually capable of doing and get in there, because everybody has a different definition. We're all not meant to be the same. If we were, we'd be all robots doing the same exact thing, but everybody's different. But some people have low self-esteem and they're like, I'll never be able to be this, I'll never be able to do that. Well, yes, you can, but you might have to go a different route, but you can get there if you really want it. And so let me show you how, and when I go on stage, I love speaking on stage because I feel a connection with people. And, the room gets quiet, people get engaged, we laugh, we talk, people come up afterwards and people will give me hugs. And I know that I've done something to help that person, to change that person. And it feels so good because I truly love interacting with others. And I feel the best way to interact with people is to be in a room with them, even virtual when you have a group session. If you can't be with them, everybody's there for one common goal. And, by hearing somebody speak, like we talked about the power, the wisdom of words, whether it be in a virtually, a workshop, a keynote, whatever the case may be, you're there. We're all there for one common goal. And just by one person speaking, you may be able to change their life, and someone's going to go home and use what they heard to better themselves. And what better feeling is that?
Yes, absolutely. 100% agree. And I think that's one of those things that where you are just an absolute queen, I guess I'm going to use that word. And I'm sure you're absolutely commanding on the stage, because I could sit and listen to you literally for hours and ironically feel really good about myself, even though you were talking. Like that's the true sign of somebody who speaks from their heart, but also speaks, not at someone, but with someone, right? And
Yeah.
I think that's also probably why you're such a successful coach, is you're able to help someone tap their own potential. You're not telling them what to do. You're
Right.
showing them what can be done and allowing them the space to do that.
Yeah.
And I do know that you're a coach as well. Stacey, share some of the stages, the types of audiences that you would like to be considered for a speaker. I'm just curious because everybody's different that speaks. So, what does it look like for you?
So I love speaking at events. Sometimes I speak in an event where they're having like on a certain topic, and I'll go into a group setting and there'll be X amount of people there, and I'll speak at an event. Sometimes I'll be in a huge conference and they'll have me on stage, and I'll be speaking to either association, a corporation, or I'll speak, I'll speak to different, different types of groups. But, everybody, likes those type of topics. How could you reach your potential? How could we avoid burnout? How can my people reduce stress in their lives? Because everybody wants, especially in a company or an association, or even working with clients, that, want to hear from a patient perspective. I work with different groups in healthcare, and, the doctors and the nurses and the staff, they want to help their patients, but a lot of times there's confliction because, they don't understand why the patient is reacting the way they are from a patient perspective. So they have, to be able to explain, this is why they react this way. What can, if you understand another human being that has a condition, well, then you might be able to relate better and work better as a team. And then I go into a team setting and I can talk to a whole group of people and say, this team, there are sometimes like insurance companies. I'll speak at insurance companies, and insurance companies have the biggest retention, loss, where people are under such pressure that they can't stay at the jobs that long. So I'll go in there and I'll speak about, reducing stress, burnout, how to avoid it, how to release the stress, and how to focus on your goals and to reach those goals and to reach your full potential, how to cleanse and clear the mind, and these things work. And then even I'll go, I did a conference in Wyoming, and I spoke in front of a group with disabilities to make these people understand that they are people too. And no matter what disability you have, you need to feel good about yourself, because you have the potential to be whatever you want to be. Whatever you're capable of being, you could reach that. What is your goal? Don't think about what other people labelize you as. We have a stigmatized world. Think about what, that you are number one. You are a person.
I like to say I am the boss, applesauce.
I like that. I like that.
It came from preschool training, but
Yeah,
like,
I like that.
preschoolers always say, "You're not the boss of me," and I'm like, "That's all right. It's all right. You're not. I'm the
I
boss
like
of me. I'm the boss, applesauce."
So I speak in different types of settings, but it all
That's awesome.
breaks down to like, reaching your true potential. How do we reach our true potential? How do we
And
overcome
see, one
stress?
of the things that you mentioned that stuck out to me so huge, that what you just said was that you would speak to like physicians who treat people like
Yeah,
that have conditions. And, you know, it's one thing to be intellectually book smart and trained on treating a, like, for example, epilepsy or any kind of disorder, disease, anything. It's
yeah,
a whole nother thing if you don't have it.
right.
Because you aren't gonna, if you had it and you're treating it, it's a completely different, you're gonna treat it completely differently because you
Yeah,
inherently understand it. That's why I love the fact that you said you do that, because that brings an entire different, what is the word I wanna say? An entire different feeling to how a physician would treat a person who has the condition they've been trained to treat, when they understand the human side of it, right?
yeah. Oh,
Like,
yeah.
that's amazing. Like, I feel like I should go pitch for you to go talk to physicians. Like, that is so needed because we've lost a lot of that human element in the medical community, because it's gotten so prescription pad, let me give you something to fix that, and we're
Yeah.
not fixing something, we're helping human beings.
Yeah. I work with Synovium Pharmaceuticals. I work with Eastside Pharmaceuticals. I was on their advisory boards, and Synovium Pharmaceuticals was so impressed. They had me do a feature presentation and then they put me on a video and played it at the conferences that they were going
Nice.
to. And you know, it they need to understand how a patient feels, because how could they make drugs and help people if they're not understanding what the patient's needs are? And
Right.
I commend them for that. I thought it was amazing. I think it's great when doctors and nurses and medical clinicians and people in the medical field, understand or are interested in understanding how the patient feels. Because when I work with both sides, the one thing that people say in the medical field, from a patient's perspective, they don't understand what I'm going through. They don't have it, and they have all this anger, and the doctor is trying to do the best job he can from his perspective, but he doesn't have it, so he's not exactly understanding the emotional aspect and the frustrations that they're going through. But if they understand and they're taught, then they could come to a common ground and communicate better with the patient. And if that patient sees that compassion and they see that they're willing to understand and go the extra length to help them, then you're going to get a bond. And if you get that bond, you're going to create a completely different atmosphere, you
Yeah, and
know.
absolutely interesting that you point that out, because what that also does is it brings together the point what you were talking about positivity, right? When
Yeah,
that bond is together and those two entities are working together on the same wavelength,
yeah,
the positive impact of that on the health overall up levels, right? Like it goes up, right?
yeah,
Instead of, not one person isn't talking down to another and I'm supposed to do what they say. You know, healthcare should be a joint venture, right? And
yes,
I love that you bring that human element. I love it that you do it from the stage. And I think it's amazing that you can do it even from the pharmaceutical realm, in creating that human connection and making it not just about the drug, but about the person who
yeah,
is in need of the drug, right? Like
right,
humanizing that whole thing and humanizing the condition, whatever it is. Um,
right.
and it's just one of the many reasons why, like, I'm like, oh, I love her. And I just, I want to tell the world about Stacey Chillemi. So I actually want to wrap up our time together today, inviting people to visit staceychillemi.com. And that's Stacey, Staceychillemi for those listening. And I want to make sure that you understand that this woman is an incredible human being and that she has so much love to give and so much positivity to put into the world. Stacey, do you have any final thoughts for our viewers?
I want to say to your viewers that, it's so important to be able to share your stories in a positive realm. You really need, to really feel good about yourself, and I tell people, write 10 strengths that you have, and and focus on, and then write a couple of things down that you wish you had but you don't have, and then set some short-term goals and some long-term goals to strengthen those areas that need a little tweaking. But focus on all those great things about yourself. Give yourself a pat on the back and realize that you are someone special, that you are number one, and you have to feel like you're number one because you are a special person. You have a story. If you could help somebody, share your story, because you never know who's going to be listening and how much you could be helping that person. Don't tell the person what to do. You want to share your story, and you want to share the ways that it helped you as a person. It's so important, and that's why it's so important to be able to overcome things and not let it bury you down in the ground, because your needs, your ability is beyond your belief. You could accomplish more than you ever know. You have the potential to become someone great. And don't let your obstacles in your life get in the way. There are ways to overcome your obstacles, and there are ways to rise above the chaos, gain the courage to act, and to move forward in life. And, I want to be there to help you. So if you need help, feel free to reach out. If you want your story heard, feel free to reach out. I have a podcast, and I always have people with incredible stories come on the podcast and share their stories and share how they're working towards helping others. And your story can change people's lives. And, and if you're at the point where you need a little help in order to change your life, contact me, because I'll help you. I'll guide you, and my book, Empower Yourself, Don't Let Your Conditions Empower You, goes step by step to help people. I even created a positivity and gratitude journal, because I talk about journaling. Journaling is so important. It's so powerful, because sometimes people don't like to open up and talk about things to people. Well, the first step could be just writing it down on paper, and, being able to realize that, have gratitude for what you have in life. Because you know what? We always say, I want, I want, I want. And you know what? You don't realize that the things you have around you are so priceless, and people don't realize until it's taken away. And then we realize how priceless and how much we need in life, and those things, how much they meant. So have gratitude, be kind to others, share your love, share your stories. You are a warrior. We all are warriors. Get your story out. Yes.
Yes. Now you just know why when she walks in a room, StaceyChillemi.com, you go visit her, when she walks in a room, the only thing you can say or onto stage is wow. And she is living proof of that. And you've seen it here on Wow Warrior. Thank you so much, Stacey.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you so much, Sherri, for having me. This is such a pleasure. Thank you so much.